In a heated congressional showdown, Representative Bennie Thompson confronts DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, exposing contradictions in her testimony and raising serious questions about the process, court compliance, and DHS accountability.
Gentleman yields. I think we've covered everyone. Mr. Ranking Member, you're recognized for a closing statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Garcia's statement. I can't believe that we would send somebody or anyone from our country somewhere else and say, well, we cut off all communication. We're a better country than that. And I just thank Mr. Garcia for raising that question. Secretary Noem, at the start of this hearing, you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Then you sat down and dodged the truth over and over and over for a little more than 3 hours, so help you God. You repeatedly testified that you and the Department of Homeland Security will follow the Constitution, the laws, and the order of the Supreme Court. Well, the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And yet, a federal court found that the Department of Homeland Security, under your watch, believes that it has a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. So you did not tell the truth to this committee today when you said you would follow the Constitution and comply with due process. You also testified that you follow orders of the Supreme Court of the United States and all courts. But the Supreme Court unanimously directed the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Garcia to the United States. But you just testified before this committee that Kilmar Garcia will never return to the United States. So you didn't tell the truth to this committee again when you said that you comply with court orders and decisions. You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children and have claimed that their parents chose to take their children with them. But you produced no evidence that the mother, let alone both parents, of those children freely gave consent to have their children deported from the United States. In fact, everyone involved in those cases say that the mothers, in fact, did not want their children, especially their sick American children, deported. In fact, your agency lured families to ICE appointments under false pretenses, lied to them, refused to let them speak with an attorney or children's father, and deported them before a court had time to even hear the case. You've given yourself the unilateral right to deport anyone you deem a threat. You refuse to comply with court orders that try to stop you. That puts all of us at risk. Beyond your false testimony about the administration's deportation policies, you falsely stated that the administration is focused on a full range of DHS's missions. Instead, your budget request appears to reflect a view that DHS's sole purpose is to be a border wall construction agency that deports U.S. citizen children with cancer. Your budget proposed cuts to cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, and aviation security. Even before asking Congress for these budget cuts, you've overseen mass reductions in the workforce at CISA and FEMA. Despite repeated requests from this committee on how many people have been fired or have been bullied into quitting before their tenure, DHS has refused to share that information. So it should worry every American that we do not know how many people are left at FEMA to respond to disasters and how many cyber defenders still work at CISA as China and other adversaries attack our systems every day. And you made clear in response to my questioning, you have no written plans for FEMA. It is very apparent that also is no plan for CISA, where you are trying to gut the agency's funding and falsely claiming that CISA is a censorship agency. Since CISA never censored anyone, but now we are all paying the price for you buying into a baseless conspiracy theory. Secretary Noem, I'm glad that you finally came to testify before this committee, but I'm disappointed, along with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, that you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so to this committee. Let me just say, if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. I hope that you will stop dancing around the truth and start telling the truth so this committee can do its work, helping to defend DHS from the attacks you've launched against it.
In a hearing that quickly turned into one of the most heated moments on Capitol Hill, Representative Bennie Thompson confronted DHS Secretary Kristi Noem with a level of scrutiny she clearly did not expect, exposing major contradictions between her congressional testimony and what courts, families, and frontline agencies have reported for years. From the moment Thompson began speaking, it was clear he came prepared with receipts, documenting a pattern of statements from Noem that simply did not align with judicial rulings or established DHS procedures. Thompson challenged her claim that due process had always been respected under her leadership, pointing out multiple court findings, including Supreme Court orders showing the agency had failed to follow lawful protocols on detention, hearings, and deportation proceedings. He reminded her that respecting judicial authority is not optional, noting that several judges had already reprimanded DHS for ignoring or delaying court-ordered actions. As Noem attempted to defend her decisions, Thompson pressed harder, highlighting specific cases where families had been separated without proper justification, where individuals were deported despite pending appeals, and where DHS employees themselves testified about confusion caused by inconsistent instructions from the Secretary's office. Thompson emphasized that these were not hypothetical stories, these were real families, real communities, and real consequences. At one point, he directly told Noem that her claims do not match reality, calling out what he described as a pattern of misrepresentation. In her public explanations of DHS enforcement practices, Noem pushed back, insisting that all actions were taken in the name of national security. But Thompson countered by quoting her own prior testimony, showing how her narrative had shifted multiple times. He contrasted her statements with department data revealing staffing shortages she had previously denied existed, especially in asylum processing and legal review units, critical positions that directly impact the process. Thompson accused Noem of downplaying these shortages to avoid accountability for case backlogs and deportation errors. When Noem attempted to shift blame to Congress, Thompson reminded her that DHS leadership had repeatedly rejected funding proposals designed to fix those very staffing gaps. He also challenged her claim that deportation decisions were always made according to established guidelines, citing an internal DHS memo revealing that certain officers were encouraged to speed up removals even when documentation was incomplete. The tension escalated as Thompson brought up the Supreme Court's recent decision criticizing DHS for failing to comply with federal court orders related to migrant processing procedures. He asked Noem why she continued to insist DHS acted lawfully when the highest court in the country had said otherwise. Noem responded by reiterating talking points about operational necessity, but Thompson accused her of hiding behind vague language instead of addressing the substance of the rulings. hearings. The exchange became even more pointed when Thompson asked whether DHS had deliberately withheld information from Congress about deportation numbers and case outcomes. He argued that incomplete or misleading briefings undermine oversight and erode public trust. Noem refused to give a clear yes or no answer, prompting Thompson to criticize her avoidance as further evidence of transparency problems. He reminded her that DHS is accountable not only to the president but also to the American people, meaning that withholding data, misrepresenting procedures, or ignoring court rulings is not just a bureaucratic issue. It is a constitutional one. By the end of the hearing, Thompson made it clear that this confrontation was not just about correcting the record for a single hearing. It was about exposing deeper systemic issues within DHS. Under Noem's leadership, he warned that if DHS continues to disregard judicial oversight, fast-track deportations without proper review, and dismiss concerns from affected families, then Congress would have no choice but to intervene more aggressively. The moment revealed a widening gap between DHS public messaging and the reality documented by courts and civil rights groups. It also underscored growing bipartisan frustration with leadership that appears unwilling to fully acknowledge errors or implement reforms. Thompson's forceful pushback signaled that these oversight battles are far from over, and that the truth about DHS operations, whether Noem wants it or not, is now under a much brighter spotlight. For many viewers, this hearing was not just about a clash between a lawmaker and a cabinet official. It was a rare look into the accountability struggles shaping one of the most powerful agencies in the federal government. And if Thompson's message was clear, it was this: the American people deserve honesty, transparency, and leadership that respects the rule of law, not selective narratives and evasive testimony.